You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. Joining him is everyone's favorite coach and hair model, Chris, aka Tex McQuilkin, Power Athlete's Director of Performance. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Not just another episode. We got a very special episode.
The episode. I mean, it's pretty special.
It is. We have two guests in-house. This is the first time that we're doing this, and we're recording live, I suppose, before our Power Athlete Coach Collective. And two of our guest speakers are sitting down with us. So we welcome in person, for the first time, Mr. Derek Woodske and Mr. Raphael Ruiz.
I feel like there should be like a crowd roar. I'm sure Antonio will pop
that in for sure.
Yeah, he'll pop that in. No, it's great, guys. Thank you so much for coming, and it's great that we could tack a podcast on the front side of this before you guys get a chance to come out and wow us with your teaching and your education, and just show a little bit of what you guys do that's so cool.
Appreciated. I'm glad to be here again this year. Obviously, it seems like the years go by a touch faster than they do previously, so it's nice to be back, just to be able to actually have some hands-on coaching as well. You know, in the world we live in, it's almost like that tactile aspect of human performance for some of us, myself included, even though this year has been chaos with other stuff. It's just nice to actually engage again with coaches, athletes. I mean, it's all kind of the same, right? So it's good to be back.
Well, last year you were here, and we got a chance to do a little bit of like rotational throwing, and so we had you out in the field with like a bunch of rocks and different implements, and I was stuck up in the gym, and all people came in, and I was like, "Hey, fuck, dude, this was amazing. It was fire. It was great. Everybody was fucking super excited." And I was like, "Great, I can't wait to watch the video." And then as I was going around, I realized we didn't video it. That was a massive fuck up on my part because I didn't allocate resources. And it was like one of those things we sat down and we're like, oh shit, dude, one of the coolest fucking things we had, and we totally didn't have video on it. Fuck. I was like, Tex, we gotta fix this.
Well, to be fair, it probably was the first time that I did a coach specific throwing anything in a decade. You know, like when I think where I came from the throwing world, right, as a collegiate coach, an athlete, it was so second nature at one point, but you know, you take a 10-year break from anything and it's like you're trying to remember the words of a book that you really liked but haven't read in a while. So I ended up like thinking back on it afterwards and being like, yeah, I probably would do that differently. You know, I'd probably adjust that a little bit. Maybe that progression was a little too steep or too dynamic for what I was trying to get across to the coaches. So to be able to do it this year, it's probably for the best. You know, that it was almost like a trial run to, oh yeah, I used to be a throws coach. All right, welcome back to that world, right? Because it is. It's a perishable skill.
It's such a gap too in the performance stuff. I mean, everybody's stuck in this sagittal plane deal.
Yeah.
And we start talking about rotational power and transverse plane and being able to move through space effortlessly and seamless, and ways to challenge it. And yet when you go to the gram or social media, people haven't even broached into it. Like I saw a guy yesterday, he had like I think it was a med ball on like a piece of rope, and he was like trying to do this thing against the wall.
Like the old tornadoes, right?
But he wasn't moving his upper body. He was just using his arms.
Well,
so there was no rotation within the trunk. So like it's not really like I don't even know what the fuck it was. And they were like, oh, it's great from the core. I'm like, his stomach never fucking moved. There was no like rotation either. There was no separating the upper body from the lower, which Raph and I talked many years ago that the greatest athletes on the planet are the ones that can separate their body from the lower body and be able to move through space. Yep. And
Well, it's like the dog toy, the Kong, right? They said the indestructible Kong can't be eaten by a dog until you give it to a bull terrier and they shred it or something like that. So like the old tornado balls on a rope are the same thing. So I go back 10 or 15 years ago, and when that device started to become very popular, they sent a bunch to Judd back then, obviously, because they're like, oh, best hammer throw coach in the country at the time. This is the guy that is going to make this product incredible. Those things lasted about 15 strikes, and they would go the way of the Kong, the indestructible rubber, right? So we stopped using them completely because we would explode them in maybe a workout and a half, right? Because we were actually doing the sport with incredible velocities and weight that you can actually do it correctly. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's limitations to that core device, right? Mm-hmm. But we're doing, rotational stresses with 35-pound weights on wire. We, an 80 meter or a 260-foot hammer thrower at the moment of release, the implement weighs roughly 900 pounds, right? Now it's going through moments that are in the microsecond where it hits these maximum velocities and loads. But if you're able to counter and accelerate an 8 or 9, or say you're a collegiate level thrower, a 6, 7, 750 pound load multiple times and hold posture rotationally, a 15 kilo rubber ball and a rope has no chance of surviving your workout.
No, but I like the fact that they thought it was.
They did. They believed it for a bit.
So the guy that invented the iron neck sent us one.
Got you.
So we put it on day one. We're all excited. We're going to do this stuff. It was so small I couldn't get it on my head and left a nasty mark. So we never used it again.
So funny that you say that, because I saw the device at the CSCCAs a couple years ago, and I'm like, everyone was getting free iron necks. The Sornex guys that go by, they all had free iron necks. And I'm like, man, I'm going to go buy that booth. I'm going to get a free iron neck, right? So I'm chatting up the guy and I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm doing my best to really create an interactive relationship. Crickets, right? Guy is knew who I was associated with, nothing. Not even hey, you should get a 25% off. Zero. And then now I realize he's looking at my melon. It was probably this isn't going to fit that
dude,
guy.
There's no fucking way it fit on my head. And they were like, hey, what'd you guys think? I'm like, I used it for 3 minutes and it left such a nasty mark on my head. I don't think I'm going to use it again.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, you need one for bigger heads. And then I'm seeing Joe Rogan. I'm like, oh, he's got a little head,
little dudes, little heads.
Big fucking noggin. And that thing didn't fit.
No, I mean, you got a Neanderthal head. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And the last time I checked, they don't make square ones. So
yeah. Oh shit. Well, no, dude, I'm super excited for the rotational stuff. The linear speed and the change of direction and everything that I've learned from Raph over the years. There was always this element, and Raph can tell you, man, the really where the rubber meets the road and the separation between athletes is always going to come down to how you move through space in that transverse plane, the ability to be able to move and do these things. And it's something that unfortunately Instagram has not fucking latched onto yet.
Well, so when you do a selfie, it's very hard to film the implement flying or you moving, right? So, you try not to be so logical about why certain things are cool and why certain things are not. But when it takes two people to record a workout just to get the base level perspective, squats, deads, glute bridges, tricep push downs where the camera's on the floor looking up through the crotch, those are probably going to be your big hitters, right?
Yeah, sure.
Having an overhead med ball throw for maximum velocity, probably not so much.
Not sexy.
No, it's hard to get an appreciation for it, right? Everyone right now is back on the Warner Gunther train. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but Warner Gunther, who is a Swiss shot putter, was a super freak. He kind of built like you were when you played in the NFL, right? Very similar body types. And there's an old video that's 33 minutes long, and it's a periodization video in French, and it shows off-season preparatory special. And it's him getting ready for the shot put season. And he could jump really high, and he could run and do all these incredible things at 308 pounds, 6'7". Very similar, right? And so that video, when it came to the United States, was VHS tape, right? Joachim, who was a NCAA shot putter, brought it over. He was from Denmark, I believe, Joachim Olsen. And so his video kind of made it through the rounds. And by the time I got it at NCAA's, it was literally, this video was handed off from thrower to thrower at big events. So I'm at the NCAA's in Arkansas. And then someone
is this 97?
So this would have been 2000 when 2000. I finally got it. And it was like a high level bag of money deal, right? I see him come into the facility, University of Idaho, right? And I'm like, oh, there's Joachim. I think he's got that video. I got a call from my brother about it, So I wave at him. He's like, oh, and he pulls it out and he kind of laughs because his shot put had broken a chunk off the VHS tape, right? This thing had been beaten. So he gives it to me. We take it back to Wyoming. We all watch it, and it's the infamous video. So
he's wearing purple too.
Yeah,
if you've never seen it.
He wears a Speedo. I mean, he's a 308-pound man that can pull a Speedo off. So, and he's very mullety, right? A lot of mullet and stashy. Like there's a lot happening in that video. Basically he's a growth hormone early monkey edition, giant forehead, like Tom Selleck, right? Like there's a lot. And, not saying that he used monkey growth hormone, but I'm just saying the time period makes sense. So when you look at that, to see it now in 2022, all the little micro clips, like each video now is like 15 seconds of him like bounding up the stairs or doing something crazy, and they're showing up everywhere on social media, and it's like, oh, I get it. Somebody took my black market video, not mine specifically, but the one I had. They're cutting it into reels, and they're posting reels now that social media is willing to pay people for all this reel activity on Instagram. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, so something that we had to hand pass, like the black documents from the government, is now making some douchebag X number of dollars off his 15-second reel clips because people are like, I've never seen anything this athletic. And it's like, this is all around us. Yeah. You guys just don't see it because you don't get access to Instagram style filming of real athletes doing real stuff. It's everywhere. Those type of athletes are everywhere. We had a dozen of them on my team, give or take.
But you know what, and your take would be interesting. Rotational power is almost something that you have to feel. And it's not something that everybody can do. It's like, I can go Hulk smash, I can move linear, I can push weights, but it's like throwing. Like if you find that you're muscling it, you're not doing it right. And that's a difficult conceptual thing for the average person to do. It's like, okay, am I doing this right? It should almost feel effortless.
Right.
And that doesn't show up in social media. It's like, wow, he makes it look easy. That can't be that hard. So let me just scroll through versus seeing an athlete do, chains and bands and, gritting their teeth and screaming. Well, when you're doing something rotational, it's like centrifugal force. So should feel easy.
Throwing or running even, I always describe it to people. It's like we've fallen into this world where when we have something that by design decelerates us through extension or, whatever, through concentric action, right? Throwing, there's going to be an eventual release of that energy where we go beyond the structure of our body. And I talk about this in our presentation tomorrow. The moment that happens, you can't hide athleticism anymore because there's going to be a direct correlation to something that shows how loose, fast, and relaxed you can generate incredible amounts of power and speed. And it goes into this implement. Now, a smaller athlete isn't going to be able to throw a 35-pound weight particularly far in the beginning because of a lot of other variables, right? There's a reason why Ryan Krauser is the size of Ryan Krauser.
What's he, 6'6"?
Yeah, he might be 6'6", 6'7". He's a monster, right? 320-ish. Joe Kovacs yesterday just went 23-23. Mm-hmm. So now we have two Americans over 23 meters in the same year. Like, it's a whole nother level, right? But Joe Kovacs also squats 900 plus for 4, right? He squatted 700 for 10 in his basement, put it on the gram, and no one even batted an eye, right? Like, he's just like, do you realize what he did?
Yeah, it's fucking unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, right? His wife Ashley is spotting him. That was, 2 years ago. But with that being said, it's very like the clock at the end of 100 meters or the distance an implement flies. It is an automatic correlation to the ability to impart force or to do things in a way in which goes beyond like the tension of a band. Like, you've seen this a million times. We all have. People don't even load bands the way they were designed to be loaded anymore. So now there's tension all the way through. So they got band tension, which just makes everything slow and heavy. Everything's slow and heavy. They're putting chains on so they don't actually release through the angle of a joint to actually come off the ground all at once. So you still have to accelerate load. They're like, oh, it's just one long heavy chain. Well, I might as well just have weight on the bar. So everything's being trained where people can kind of hide this like lack of dynamic energy. And they can like, oh, they're training hard, man, that looks amazing. And it's like you hand them something or you make them go run and it's just not right. And you're like, oh, they can't accelerate his body. Well, that makes sense. You know, you never could, you know?
So this preceded social media. So even going back to when I was interning at the D1s and seeing the football, it was for show. Like the football coaches are looking over. They can't be there, but they're looking and observing. And then watching the kids go out on the speed days, that's when injuries occur, different things occurred. So I guess it's always been for show, but now we have showing for the world versus just the football coach.
Yeah, and you want, if I jump in just for a sec, it's like I feel like there's two sides to this, that there's a good and a bad, right? Now the good side is the 4-minute mile is no longer, as an example, as difficult to break because we are getting exposed to so many great athletes doing things on social media that, you know, you saw it this year at the World Championships, like 200 meter times, 400 hurdle times. One of my athletes placed third in the 400 hurdles this year, 2-second PR at the World Championships. Like there's all these incredible things because they're able to see and hear about things and be like, oh, I can do that. So there's a positive to that, right? There's, you know, the idea of world records being broken, I think, is partially a byproduct of us having more exposure to the world, right? So we can be like, oh, there's a Kenyan javelin thrower that is a world champion because he learned on YouTube, right? So there's that. Like, I don't deny that. The negative other side of that is people also realize that there's certain things that they can focus on that maybe don't have a huge amount of correlation to success. And that has a tendency to rise up a little bit too high. So there's a lot of really bad training to go with the really good examples, right? So I think we could probably have even more success if there wasn't also the globalization of dog shit that is occurring in strength and conditioning.
Well, but you're also talking about people's ability to discern what's good and bad.
Oh, there's no.
That's
forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know, and maybe like a video like of Gunter. It's right. It's Gunter.
I'm pretty sure
it's how he said it.
Yeah, he's not from Arkansas.
So yeah, no. Well, I saw that video pretty early on, and I'm pretty sure I saw it like that the clips got emailed to me.
Yeah.
Or they might have come on a disc. And
right.
I mean, big, strong dudes doing athletic things, and I mean things that we've always seen. I mean, some of the things I'm most sad about was that we never videoed any of our training that Raph and I did.
Absolutely.
Like fucking, how dumb were we? I mean, shit. There was so much cool shit that like I think back now and I'm like, fuck, we didn't video any of that shit. Nobody would have believed us unless we had the video.
Or it's like when I think back on all that information that we had, that we just were training. Everything. I didn't even think about documenting workouts. Why would you document something that you're going to do tomorrow?
Or post it online and tell people what you did. Like, I never even thought about that. I remember my dad was like, you should start a website. I'm like, what would I put on there? He's like, I don't know. You like working out. When you put that workout stuff on there, I'm like, nobody's going to look at that shit.
So you put our generation collegiate track and field athletes, that was blasphemy. You didn't post what you were doing in practice because you didn't want anyone to know.
To know what you were doing.
Exactly. Yep. You were not allowed to talk about it. You weren't allowed to share numbers. You weren't allowed to discuss how your practices broke down. There was zero sharing of information when I was in college. Zero. It got a little bit more when I was training with Judd, but not a lot. You know, like I would blog a little bit about our workouts before blogs existed, but it was mostly just boredom, right? Because I didn't realize there was actually interest. So when you look at that, like even my generation, or it's actually all of our generations, I still have a little bit of a hard time with like posting some of that stuff and thinking, okay, if I was actually training a shot putter for NCAAs right now or Worlds, would I post their workouts? And there's a part of me that's really like, no way. But if we had saved all of our training document and filmed it all, we'd have a second business right now just releasing clips to Reels and to YouTube for monetization, and we wouldn't have to really work all that much.
Well, Raph would be making money off the snuff films.
Oh, for sure.
That we trained. So one year we got kicked out of the weight room,
Nice.
and we ended up in a warehouse in the middle of Tampa in the summer that had skylights. So
Awesome.
it was probably 120 degrees in this fucking place.
Easily.
Yeah.
Tampa
And
humidity.
it was fucking awful. And all the weights had rusted. Like, they were all not bolted down. Like, the fucking training people would have been like, this is staged. Like, there's no way you guys fucking trained in this. And then, like, the running and all the other shit we did, it was absolute. Like, I remember when I went to training camp, like, we showed up to do our, like, conditioning, all our stuff. I fucking demolished everybody. And I hadn't been there a single day. And they were like, oh, you know what we're doing for your training? And I was like, you won't. Like, you wouldn't even believe it if I fucking told you.
But wouldn't that be the argument why he was sub 10% as a lineman in the NFL when that
100%.
didn't exist?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? Because you were training in a way in which people are just now finally maybe starting to replicate. Maybe. I doubt they are.
And I would say one of the positives to doing it is when we were working with the Olympic swim team, the coach actually talked about, hey, is there something that these guys can do that looks really cool because they want to look back and be like, hey, you know, that's kind of like my badge of honor. This is why I'm winning gold medals. And that would be one of those things to where, for instance, Raider can look back in wherever this journey takes him, and he can go, holy cow, look at all of this crap my dad made me do for the last 18 years of my
He's
life.
going to be in fucking therapy being like, and then look at this, and look at this, and look at this.
And all the therapists can be like, yep, that
Yeah,
moment
that was
right
it.
there. Look
There
at
it
that
is.
post right there.
You can't blame your father forever, at least till you're 26.
So it definitely would give that edge of having almost that video diary of,
Yeah.
wow, I remember. But the issue is the only thing that would post would be those days that kind of suck.
The hardest and
the
worst.
hardest, worst days. And that's what the social media cannon fodder is those days are the ones that, we'll get a ton of likes and a ton of messages and be like, oh, wow, look at Raider grind. But they won't go, hey, look at this one where we took 5 minutes rest in between,
Right.
where we're going, okay, look at those 2 reps. Look at the, I'll do a before, this was his form, this is after, and we'll get like, hey, there's 30 likes. And nobody will look at that versus a coach will send me a message and they'll go, wow, that's unbelievable.
Right.
Look at the change there. But we won't get any. There won't be any clicks. There won't be anything. It's just kind of what it is.
It's a travesty, right? Where we've gotten to this point now where people are just replicating hard, right? Replicating. Well, they're not even replicating because they may only film 15 seconds. So they'll spend an hour in a weight room getting up to this one thing that looked really smashing. And they're like 15 seconds of smash. Not realizing that might have been the only smash of the day. Where you guys were smashing for an hour, 90 minutes,
It's like 3 hours.
3 hours, right?
It was fucking awful, dude. Like, I just remember, like, most days we would show up. Like, Raph would get up and, he'd be there super early, and I wouldn't show up till like 8:30. And then we would get done at 1 and go to lunch at like 1:30.
Yep.
Maybe 2 o'clock. And like there was like legit 4 or 5 hours like in that day where you were in the fight, and it was like because we would do some form of dynamic movement, we lift weights, we would sprint, we do it like it was fucking full on. Like it should have been multiple workouts. We just did it all at once.
Right.
And then I would eat. He'd go back, and I would just go home and go to sleep.
Right. Yeah.
That was it.
Which is a smart way to do it, oddly
Yeah.
enough, right?
It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was just like fucking train. And then my favorite part was when people would come visit us. Or like people would come from out of town, like, hey, I'm going to control. I'd be like, oh, fuck. Like, thank God. Like, there's like, because it was like, it was nice to have validation. People be like, you guys do this shit every day? I'm like, yeah, we fucking
Did y'all turn it up for those people or just do what
You
was
didn't
on the
have to.
card?
didn't have to.
You didn't have
I mean,
to.
remember David Boston showed up.
Oh, but yeah.
Yeah. And Raph had to go and tell him, being like, dude, you're going to hurt yourself. You should probably not train with us anymore. This
Well-
isn't good for you.
And there was a guy, now that's a perfect example of that era. He was the start of
Yeah.
in my opinion, the start of the attention era for training over performance, right? You're talking about a guy who was about 275 pounds right before he started blowing up, 270, trained.
His fucking chest was like,
Yeah, so there was a guy that went through the Poliquin system,
Yeah.
not for clarification, by no means did he go through the quote unquote Poliquin system. He was trained by Charles initially in Scottsdale and then got handed off to another coach. And regardless of what they were doing behind the scenes, obviously he was a phenom, right? But it's the law of diminishing return. You don't make a wide receiver 275 pounds. He had you're just asking, like, in theory, would it be amazing if you could have a injury-free 275-pound wide receiver? Yeah, of course. But it's not going to work that way, because it goes back to the conversation we started with. You start training slow and compartmentalized and very specific joint muscle movement pattern over dynamic athleticism, you're going to get on the field and things are going to start exploding. And he exploded, literally, right?
Yeah. His patella tendon.
Yeah. And he never really came back from, he had a little GHB thing later on, but
he's just a party guy.
He's just a party guy. He just needed to sleep on the plane.
Well, dude, like you think about like hamstrings in terms of deceleration. So you think about like the shifting on the tibial plateau. The dude had these massive quads and no hamstrings and no ass and no back. Like everything was in the front. And I remember watching him trying to decelerate when we were sprinting and being like, that guy's gonna fucking blow his knees out, because he started hopping. Like he couldn't decelerate. And I know that was something we worked on constantly. Sprint as fast as you can and then come to a really quick stop, and being able to control. You don't need fucking 50 yards to decelerate.
And I remember JD and Corey Chavis, I literally went to him and I was like, hey, I don't know this guy, but I go, can you guys kind of back him off a little bit? And because I go, I'm worried. I'm watching this session. I'm like, I don't know what his ego is going to allow him to recognize when he has to pull back on the reins himself. And I said, I'm going to trust that you guys, clown him, joke with him, do something. But I go, I don't want him, because this is going to end up being a bad session.
Right, and you'll get knocked for it when you had nothing to do with any of the development to that type of athlete.
Yeah.
But he is, like, when he made ESPN the magazine and there was the big spreads that came out, and the article was going in depth about his coach living with him and traveling with him and cooking his food and
doing IVs.
And it really was kind of the breakthrough to what we now think of as super high level development of an athlete. But you could tell it was probably a little armchairish back then. It probably wasn't experts doing it. They were, they was black bagging it, showing up at 2 a.m, giving someone an IV, out of there at 2:30. No one ever knew about it. We even saw that in the NFL in 2007. It was still pretty hush-hush for someone to get an IV, right?
Sure.
Because an IV automatically, if it's a needle, there's got to be drugs, right?
Sure.
There was still that little bit of that hangover with that psychology. Thank God that's changed. But again, it's social media and modern things that have actually helped that out. And I give a lot of credit, oddly enough, to things like the UFC and MMA. They've done more for destigmatizing some of that than almost any other sport in the world.
I fuck up that word constantly. I actually use remove the stigmatization, and then I fuck that one up constantly, so don't worry about that.
They fixed the eyesight issue that the UFC had, destigmatized the...
with their with their stigmata.
Their stigmata.
Oh, wait, wasn't that a movie with the hand?
Yeah. So they fixed the religious issue. But in regards to that, I do think that... I would have to say you got to give a huge shout out to a guy like Joe Rogan for that, right? Because he was the critical thinker in the background that was like, okay, if this is HRT, if this is hormone replacement, that's different than what this is, which is maximizing health and wellness, blah, blah, blah. And you go down all these avenues. But I tell you what, before we had open conversation where people were allowed to just discuss it, it was basically, my kid didn't make the NFL because he didn't use drugs. My kid didn't make MLB because he didn't use drugs. If my kid could have used drugs, he'd be like you, right? So that kind of dissolved, and it also allowed us simultaneously to be like, if I do a Myers cocktail, which Charles was doing back in 2000 with his athletes with increased vitamin C doses, we can start to massively upregulate restoration between training sessions, and if blah, 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 we can create better athletes. So I do think there are some positives that come out of something like a David Boston, but at the same time, talk about putting a spotlight on look over performance, because in my opinion, he was the first. They wanted to look a certain way when he stepped on that field.
Well, it was also him wearing the cat's eyes contacts. He like showed up and like the hair, and then he had like the weird backpack that he was carrying with all of his supplements and food. Like he kind of broached this fucking weirdo, where I think that there's a non-crazy person approach to it, and the problem is when you get to this fucking obscure, strange, like where it just looks fucking weird. Like that's a hard thing.
Did the character from Jerry Maguire, like the wide receiver that he showed the money to, is this based off David Boston, or did David Boston base himself off of Cuba's character?
That's a good question.
I never made a connection between the two.
What are the years?
It's close. It's got to be right around there. And I think you could make a pretty strong argument that if Britney Spears created TikTok, David Boston created influencers.
Did Britney Spears create TikTok?
There ain't no doubt she's the queen of TikTok. She just never got credit for it, right? Like she has been what people are trying to be now. Well, you know what's funny about Britney Spears, side note, is she's finally getting positive attention.
Absolutely.
Right? Like she's finally starting, and it's the TikTokers that are, because they're all taking all their old dances and all their old music and creating all these things. So people are finally like, Britney was all right. She's like our queen.
It's fucking Britney, bitch.
It's Britney, bitch. Right? Yeah. So, but David, like the guy showing up with all the pills in his backpack and making a scene and being a show and being all these things other than a touchdown creator. I mean, he's no Joe Jurevicius, right?
Yeah.
But he made a lot of money in a very short window of time, which sounds very familiar to today's modern world.
It's a good deal. I mean, would David Boston really have been that first Instagram? I mean, dude, I'm sad that social media, I mean, really Instagram wasn't more prevalent when we were deep in this fight, because I look at the Chronicle. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to have had more historical feedback for what we did. Yeah. And then on top of it, when I see this shit and people are like, oh my God, look at that. I'm like, yeah, dude, we fucking killed that. Yep. Like I was watching some training with The Rock and Aaron Donnelly. Aaron Donald. And I was like, I would have liked to have been there. That would have been a fun one. Yep. So, no, I mean, it's good and it's bad. I think it's giving people an interesting glimpse of like what could be happening. Right. And then, you think like, hey man, like these guys are brands, they're building brands and they're looking from this, whereas it feels like a lot of work. Like there was really some amazing simplicity of playing the game and doing it in this way in kind of a, in a hidden way, opposed from constantly shining a light. But that world doesn't exist, and this is the world we live in. So you either bitch about it or you go forward.
This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market.
We've built our online training business by partnering with Train Heroic and helping us deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training.
And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best tech and training, go to trainheroic.co/powerathletehq. And now back to the show.
Here's a question. Can you compartmentalize that outside world and build your brand and build your business and still be a high-level performer? At what point does it become a distraction? Because some of the NBA guys, as an outside observer, I'm seeing all the effort that they're doing distract from their game. Can it be done? Can it just be, hey, let's clock in, let's clock out?
I don't know if I could. I mean, just the attention in terms of like going places. I mean, just the attention in terms of girls. Like that was a fucking more overwhelming than enough. I can't imagine like the social media, the dating, like all this other shit. I'm like, holy hell! Like I don't like. It's too much to manage. I really like the fact that I got to come to Tampa and train with Raph, where like I didn't play for the Bucks. I mean, my team was far away. We got to go out and we were, I was a big dude, so they knew I played something, but I didn't play for the Bucks. And so there was a little anonymity, which is another word I fuck up constantly, to be able to do it, where we got to go focus on it. Whereas I think today, I mean, it just feels like wherever you go, it's like a Hollywood celeb, which I wouldn't want any fucking part of that. I mean, you heard Brad Pitt talk about it. He's like, fuck, it's awful.
That's why he's developed this faceless disease. Yeah. There is no way that's true.
I think I'm claiming I have it too, except it's faces and names.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm like, what was your name?
I already got names, right? I've had it since birth, but this face thing, I think he's onto something. I mean, how else could you like talk about being able to buy back your anonymity, right? If you're Brad Pitt, be like, what's wrong with him? Oh man,
He can't remember faces.
He has a disease. He can't see faces anymore. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's blank. And they tried to describe it on USA Today.
It's probably the greatest fucking troll of it. I mean, so like,
it's amazing.
Now if he meets people like, oh, you don't remember me? It's like, I got this disease. I don't remember faces.
Right, because back in the 70s, you had to pretend to die on a toilet to disappear, right? A la Elvis Presley. And now you can just be like, fuck it, I don't see faces.
Are you saying Elvis didn't die on a toilet?
Come on.
So I'm going on some inside information. My training partner in college is a guy named Drake Parker.
Yeah.
Drake Parker's dad, David Parker's brother, Ed Parker, who was Elvis's bodyguard.
Yeah.
Father
Karate.
of American Kempo. Jeff Speakman, the perfect weapon. So we would go stay, and I got to go stay with Drake and his family in Hawaii. And his dad came out.
And the gardener out back was a hell of a singer?
No. That would have been fucking hilarious. But the dad came out and basically showed us all this jewelry that when they went to Graceland, that Elvis would give them all this shit. And they had all this crazy shit he was showing us. Wow. And then I asked him, I was like, did you ever hang with Elvis? And he's like, yeah, many times. We went to dinner, but he didn't eat dinner till 2 a.m. Yeah. And there was like tinfoil over the windows and this. And he's like, and just know that poor man died on the toilet. And I was like, did he really? And he's like, my brother found him.
Yeah, that's a tragedy.
And he was so constipated and so backed up.
From the pills.
And all the other shit they were giving him. He fucking basically died mid-shit. Couldn't get it out, strained, and fucking died.
Yep. Yeah, I'd heard that. I heard that. Like, he is the first example of the opioid epidemic in America. Like, he was the writing on the wall in 1974 that something horrific was coming. And it took 40 years for it to hit us.
Did you see the new Elvis
I did.
Was it biography? No,
Biopic.
If it's anything like Queen's, it's got to be amazing, because Queen was amazing.
There's a lot to pack in. 40 years, and my dad's a big Elvis guy, and he signed it, so he said it was great, and I'll take his word for it.
They've hit a bunch of his weird shit, like he was obsessed with like young girls and white cotton panties, and there's a whole bunch of like
weird shit. But the plot a little bit, but the plot's more about the colonel, and how just a fucking dirtbag he is. Yeah. So it's but Tom Hanks cannot be the star, even though it's about Elvis. So.
100%.
Well, it's perfect to circle back around. I think an athlete, to answer your question, would have to determine how big of a star you want to be.
Right.
Because you could be a very, very successful pro athlete and not be LeBron. But I think that you have to go out of your way to develop the LeBron persona. You could perfectly be highly successful and do your job and make a ton of money. But if you want to be that superstar, then that has to be manufactured. That has to be like, hey, I don't want to go to the club, but I'm going to go to the club and I'm going to get video of me at the club, so on and so forth. Or I need to go, hey, Derek, video me working out, because you have to create that persona. Working with Dion, that was an interesting thing where he created that superhero persona. Like
Primetime.
I'm Primetime. Outside of that, we're bass fishing and it's sitting on a little lake and we're sitting there and I'm Dion. But, when he steps in the arena, it's put the cape on and it's go time. And you find that Terrell Owens kind of syndrome where I kind of watching that from the outside and knowing what I knew, the moment I saw Terrell start to go, T.O. does this, and Terrell was talking to T.O. about, and I was like, wait, was that the fourth person?
Nah. So when he started talking about himself in the third person, and then he somehow adopted the fourth person, which is actually when you're talking about yourself as we.
Right.
So he was like, hey, like we did this, and you're like, wait a minute, who was there? And it's like, yeah, like we took a shower, and I was like, who was in there? Well, it's just me. So like that now he transcended into the fourth person, which is identifying yourself as more than one person as a we, and you're about yourself.
Still has time to send a friend of mine DMs on Instagram. she is very attractive,
and he's trying to slide in on them DMs.
No, we are trying to slide in.
Sorry, T.O. We are trying to.
And it would happen every once in a while. She's very attractive, not Insta celebrity or anything like that. She's a professional woman that has Instagram, and every once in a while, the real TO would slide into her DMs. And I'm like, that is a dude that like is willing to see like, oh, she showed up in, let's call it the Explorer page, because how else would you know?
Yeah, the fucking algorithm vomit,
right?
Yeah.
So for sure, that's what must have happened. And he was, well, we were like, man, she's hot.
And
right?
she fucking screen caps and is like, check
and sent
this.
it to me,
Oh,
yeah.
Jesus.
And I was like, that is amazing. What do you do? She goes, what do I do? And I'm like, well, you got to write back. I mean, just find out. And very polite, very normal stuff. It wasn't like, you know, any weirdness, but it was just like, huh, that's weird. I would never have thought of that unless we started talking about TO.
I've been married for too long I've been married long enough to where like that wasn't really a thing, and I always thought it was kind of weird because I get all these weird DMs from people like
Yep.
who knows if they're bots, but I'm always like, I wonder if dudes like slip a DM and it actually ends up, and then Paul Carter's like, oh yeah, all the girls I meet
All the time in that world.
Yeah, he meets them through DMs and this, and then they have relationships, and then I think they finally meet on, you know, once they get a proposal or something.
Yeah,
I've
sounds
seen
weird.
the Monte Te'o documentary, and that anyone that I don't know, no, I'm staying the hell away because that is super weird.
What, the catfish?
Yeah,
They did it.
it's
Netflix
super
got
good.
It's really good. I think that was very cathartic for him
Yeah.
to go through it and speak about it. Man, yeah, must watch.
Well, I'm always curious too on like I know we've talked about this dude sending dick pics and like, hey, this is the one that's gonna get her. Let me slip her that way. That to me, because I see we've had girls I know that have big followings over. Asked them like, you get a lot of fucking dick pics, and they're like, yeah, it's like fucking getting thrown hot dogs at you.
100%.
And I'm like, so just like random dudes. I'm like, is it always their dick? She's like, nah, probably just sending like they just want to. Like basically you know, use the currency of dick pics to send, and I'm like, so they just have like one that they like that they just keep sending girls, thinking like, what if you show up and you're
it's
not black?
it. Yeah, right. Yeah. That's strange. You look different in real life.
Yeah, you're a 5'2" white dude. You're sending me a fucking dark, you know, it's fucking weird.
Well, and I think it to not go down a rabbit hole by any stretch.
I think that's the theme of this podcast. Hold on, we're going down a fucking rabbit hole.
But it's like, so the one, like this past year has been interesting for me because I went back to school and I got involved in law enforcement and I became a sheriff, right? Like a complete 90-degree turn from where I was last year. And the one thing that it has, and I kind of always assumed, but we live in the Matrix. And
Yes, I know we do.
And there is another existence that exists around us that we are unaware of 99% of the time.
So is this kind of where Joe Rogan was talking about like DMT being able to access alternate universes that are happening at this moment, that there's other dimensions that things are living in? Is that kind of?
No, it would be more like Men in Black when Kay is working in the post office and they remind him that everyone around him is aliens, right? And so when you're like, oh, you know, just another older dude on a random bike going down the side of the road, you stop him, he's got 4 warrants, he's probably got a gun, he's got a pound of meth, right? Like, you're like, oh, wow, you guys, there is another world happening around my little neighborhood. And it's constant. Like, that part of it was a huge eye-opener. But with that being said, the dick pic on Instagram is the equivalent to me of the 1980s flasher. Right? So back then you really had to get your nerve up to like open coat a stranger on the street and be like, check this out, any takers, right? Because you're putting a risk out there. It's the same person.
Dude,
it just makes you realize how many more flashers there actually are.
Unfortunately, what social media has done is, not to belabor this point, but I think with social media and what we see, everybody's putting their best foot forward at all times. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we get to necessarily see, well, I don't know. I mean, we were talking about Craig Douglas's course. We were rapping earlier a bit about it, and they're like, it answered a whole bunch of questions for me. Like Craig, who you're going to meet, who's coming to do our what's it called?
Plenary.
So you have your keynote and your plenary. I fucked that word up earlier. So he was on our podcast, Undercover Cop, like really good dude, teaches all these combatives. Doesn't necessarily subscribe to like any martial art. It's like a mix of like catch wrestling, boxing, jiu-jitsu, and it's just
whatever works.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is the shit to keep you alive. So he's on the podcast, fucking cool cat, and so he hits me up and it's like, hey, like I'm having a course in like 2 days. Okay, what do I need? Cup, a mouthpiece, and 200 rounds. That's all I asked for. So we show up.
Whose car are we taking?
Yeah, seriously. You know me. I'm like, fucking, let's go. So we show up to this range, this private range out in Bastrop in the middle of nowhere, and it's literally Fight Club. Like, you're wearing helmets. Like, a dude has a sim gun. I mean, I still got a sim mark right here from where I got shot in the belly button at close range. But it was like the dude's got a gun. I'm 6 feet away. I kind of always imagined everybody was like in this smooth John Wick. Dude fumbled his thing. I catch him with a forearm, knock him to the ground, and basically fucking curb stomp him to death. And I'm like, so you can have a gun within 6 to 10 feet of me, and I will kill you before you draw it. So it was epic to answer.
It's like a run play.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. And just fucking trying to like fuck people up. The only place I got exposed was I don't like to be on my back, which in the NFL, if you play on the ground, you don't play. And if somebody's on top of me, it's a real bad thing. So I don't like to lay on my back. So that's why I should probably get into jiu-jitsu so I get better at that. But there was a dude from Starting Straight, Nick, who's like 6'3", 300 pounds, 330. He's a huge dude, laying on top of me. I couldn't get him off. And so he fucking got my gun, shot me. So the next time I grabbed my gun and jammed it in his asshole and pulled the trigger and fucking simmed it in the balls. Like, this is how violent it was. It was fucking great. Like, it was so much fun. But it answered a lot of questions for me, because there were situations that you could never necessarily mimic unless you've been in them for life or death. Like, hey, I got on these helmets, I got a sim gun, this guy's here, and he looks kind of shady. How close do I let him go before I fucking action this thing? And for me, it's like, even if the dude's shady, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. If I got a gun and he doesn't have anything, I'll go hands with anybody. But yet there was girls in the class. Dudes acted, girl fucking shot this dude, and we're like, yeah, he had a gun. Like, he was going to do something shady. He hadn't done it yet. Now, if it was me in that situation, I would have gone to jail. Her, they would have been scot-free. But it was pretty amazing. And so what I'm asking Craig to come talk at the collective about is the idea of readiness. And, like, making sure that you're training and you're vigilant and that you're putting yourself into constant testing and training. Like something we were talking about, like jiu-jitsu. Like, if you're in that situation, but within the confines, let's say within the dojo, within the mats, but then you get into a situation where, I got a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and one of the guys, John Valentine, who actually follows Hammer, I met him in the course and now follows our training, jiu-jitsu black belt, really, really switched on dude. And he's like, fuck, dude, I'm giving away 100 pounds. Like, there isn't too much I can do where you're not going to fucking shatter my skull.
Right.
And so I think what's cool and what I liked about Craig's course is a lot of guys are jiu-jitsu guys, combatives, whatnot. They go to Craig's course as kind of their AAR to see if their shit's all in one sock, to quote Dave Brewer. And so there's like this testing thing, and I know, Raph, you're big on this, where it's like fucking all the training in the world ain't worth shit if you can't do it when it matters.
Skill, display skills.
But you have to be able to put yourself in these situations. So here's a situation where Derek went out and was like, fucking, I'm going to go through a post-certified course, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to do this, and now all of a sudden you're in a situation and you're seeing the shit from a completely different level. And when I was going through Craig's course, somebody asked, and I was like, because a lot of it was like observation, seeing how people act. I'm like, you either got to be a cop or go be a bouncer at a club, because I learned all this shit and how to observe fucking bad people from being a bouncer.
Right, like I had no idea. When we talk about presence of force, especially if you're in uniform, they can tell you a million times what you'll see and then what you do see. And sure enough, I would have never guessed how easily it is to spot guilty personalities. I'm not saying criminals necessarily.
Yeah. People up to no good.
People up to no good. If you're in uniform, their body language is so incredibly subconscious. And it's so obvious that you're like, man, how can that person be a criminal? Like, they either have criminal intent, they're either somebody that has been up to something. There's something about them that they do not want you to notice them. And their behavior is like, they might as well have just turned the light on, right? And you'll see the other one. It happened to me a couple times when I was on patrol. foot patrol, you would get a guy that just death stares you as they walk by. And you're like, wow, that guy's got some history with the police. Like, something about him really hates us. Who knows what it is, right? There's no way to judge. But the ones I would look for is I would stand and wait for the crowd to come through the gate to pay. And it was like amazing to watch them turn like a sunflower to the sun, right? Like as they're coming towards you, they're like, are you going to walk through that gate backwards? Like, it's to the point now where I can't even see your body. You're like totally bladed me. And they're like blading you as they go by. And you're like, what did you do? At some point in your life, what have you done that is ingrained into your genetic body language? And so that part's been fascinating because you're just like, wow, you're obviously uncomfortable with everything about this. And it made me wonder how many people do that without realizing it. Have I ever done it in a coaching athlete scenario? Because then I follow it all the way back. Like, man, I wish I had been a little more, like I've always had okay emotional quotient stuff, as a coach. But it's like, whew, I could have probably used some of this training with my athletes for sure. You've probably seen it a lot.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when you're dealing with getting somebody to display a skill in a very chaotic, stressful environment, which is what the weight room is. You're asking somebody, okay, we're going to do crazy pies, 15-second go fast, and then blah, blah, blah. You're going to run these resisted sprints. Like, their ability to maintain calm is going to be will determine how well they can display that skill. And you have no idea what their history is. You have no idea if they're putting up defenses against you. They may want to fight you, which they obviously sometimes want to. Yeah. And your ability to emotionally go, you know what, I'm not going to butt heads with you. Let me take a step back and then figure this out. And it happens all the time.
And do you find, like you'd made the comment earlier about the ability to display skill is a byproduct of them having done the work, I guess you could say as well, and put in the time and being ready, and their body language showing up if you don't see them all the time and being like, oh, this person's been lying.
No, absolutely.
Because they're about to have to perform for me, and I'm going to catch them in a lie.
In an ego where they feel guilty about themselves, and then they're going to displace it on you. Like, okay, you didn't do the work. Don't get mad at me, kind of thing. So, yeah, it happens.
Well, I mean, we saw it all the time at the CrossFit football seminars. We would show up, and, first question was asked, like, how many guys have been sprinting and running and changing direction? How many people are ready to do this? Everybody would raise their hand, and then all of a sudden we used to start, and, like, it was hilarious. There was an amazing... one, I'm stoked that Raph and Kelly are here this weekend because they were at the very first one, and really the brain helped me, this whole brainstorm deal. But we fucking just took people at their word, and we're like, dude, you've been sprinting, let's fucking go. And we would just get into it, which because, train professional athletes, and I'm a professional athlete, if a dude shows up, to train with us and with Raph, like, they already know the fucking deal. We're going to fucking run. There's going to be dynamic warm-up. We're going to move through space. We're going to do this, and we're going to go fucking hit it. So, like, there's no... there's no hiding it. We know, like, if you're showing up here to train and you're training with other professional athletes and you've done this job, now you might be a little out of shape,
right? Which
is fine. Take a little bit extra. Don't fucking hurt yourself. But there's no hiding. Like, we know, like, everybody knows the score. We'd show up to the CrossFit football deal, and people, like, I don't know what they thought, but there were people, and we'd be like, hey, many guys have been sprinting and training in this, and we the first couple, we just fucking got into it, and people, like, fucking Santa Iwo Jima, people were getting fucking grenaded. And then we had to be like a step back, and I was like, Raph, what are we doing? He's like, I think we're going to have to put him through an extensive warm up and diagnostic for us to figure out who we have to fucking manage. And that's where the dead bugs, and we got into this whole dynamic, or not, it wasn't dynamic, it was the static movement prep, isostability, which you got from Dr. Gasser, and, like, the isostability test and the ability to use limbs, which has become a foundation of the program, because we needed time to figure out who was ready and who wasn't, and we had to put 3 or 4 and within 20 minutes figure it out, and then figure out who we had to triage. Because originally, remember the original ones, dude, it was like fucking like Normandy getting just shot in the face, and dudes were imploding, and we were like, holy fuck, we can't hurt everybody day one.
It's America's Got Talent, right? And it's you see this play out over and over and over again. People can't figure out how there could be 7,000 shitty singers standing outside of a building thinking that they legitimately sound like Whitney Houston. right? And I've used this analogy a lot because we're like, why do they show up so unprepared? Why do they show up so unable to perform? And you realize because either everyone in their life or through their own delusion, there's a percentage of the population that no matter how much they believe in something, it's not reality, right? And so it's America's Got Talent. And we see it in sports. CrossFit football, which is not my world, but I can appreciate the analogy.
Well, sadly, I wish we had known you because we would have sucked you in. You would have been fucking right there with us, just being like, what the fuck?
Yeah, right.
And what was wild is Chris was what was that, number
5?
Yeah, he was one of our
Fifth
original
one.
attendees, number 5 in Oakland.
Yeah.
And that was that was an epic event because remember Rob had just gotten booted out and he came. We gave the nutrition talk. We must have had 50 people at that thing.
Yeah, it was 40 to 50. What I can't comprehend is it was 16 hours and the amount of stuff and drills and information and lectures that we fit in to then go and be able to teach it years later and still like we're missing stuff from the OG.
Well, we had to.
These guys are probably better teachers than me.
Well,
that's
no,
what I'm saying.
We figured in those days that we were going to give people their money, or we were going to give them their money's worth. But we also figured that people were like coming up from up here, and then over the course we realized like, oh shit, dude, like we're talking about complex things. I mean, Rob's over there talking about chunking method in terms of like movements in this, and like this is things that people had never even heard of.
Well, I'm grateful because my 8-mile moment was John asking for 3 muscle contractions. Yeah. I'm looking around a room of 50 people.
Dude,
as 23-year-old, like pretty shy dude, and then okay, you were 3 years later. Okay, you actually answered a question correctly.
Yeah, that was one of my deals. I'm like, hey, can you guys tell me the 3 muscle contractions? Like it was probably 90%. Like nobody raised their hands, and like people got it wrong. Like I'm like, well, we have an eccentric, a concentric, asymmetric, and we're going to base the training around these different muscle contractions, the accentuation phase. And it got to the point where like we knew what we wanted to teach, and we had to go back. And Ralph's like, I think I got to do a physiology talk. And Raph would get up there and fucking split their wig for like, which should have been about 30, but it ended up being more like 60, if not longer. But like distal, proximal, this is how, we get into myelination and rate coding. And like, it went a little probably, these people like eyes are big, but it's stuff.
Sometimes you have to throw that in though, just to make them realize how far from the end of the path they actually are.
Well, and this was Raph's deal is like, man, these guys own gyms, they're training athletes, and they know nothing of within physiology, muscle contractions. They don't understand like how this stuff is playing into this, and it's.
Well, Derek brought up America's Got Talent. Do you guys remember that show, Pros versus Joes?
Yes.
That was my favorite show. Because the average person has zero concept of really what an elite level athlete is. And so if you were coming to the CrossFit football seminar, how many guys would answer that question? Hey, what do you want to do? I want to train professional athletes. I want to train Olympians. I want to train. And I'm like, oh, well, do you really have what it takes? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I love to work out. And I'm like, well, that's really not that. That's like the very, very scratching the surface. And I think a lot of them just didn't realize the complexity of like, okay, you know what? I remember they put a guy in the pool with Michael Phelps. And the guy's like, they interview, and that was the best part of it. They're like, okay, how are you going to do? You're lined up against the best Olympian swimmer. And he was like, oh, I like my chances. And then it was just like, okay, here he goes. And he's like swimming laps. And this guy, they had to send the lifeguard in to go save him. And there's Michael just underwater, just swimming back and forth. And I remember they brought out Lawrence Taylor. Like, who can run the ball past Lawrence Taylor? And it was just unbelievable. Roy Jones, they put a guy in the ring with Roy Jones. And it's always amazing how many times guys go, yeah, I have a chance. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't have not even a clue.
Yeah, wasn't it? It was Romanowski. Didn't
Romanowski was in there?
When like you had to run the ball against Romo. I played against Romo, And he is a fucking absolute savage of a human.
I feel like Phelps would go like 60, 80%, but Romo would just like, fuck that guy.
Romo's like, did they sign the waiver? Because I'm going to fucking, I'm going to kill him.
Yeah, Romo would have been like 1980s wrestler who gets pissed and is like, you think this is fake? Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. No, I mean, he probably I could see him over there, and I know he the dude brought the ball and he fucking smashed him, and it just that dude had an absolute fucking rocket.
But that's the truth. That's a perfect analogy, because I remember the last couple years of American Gladiators, like modern American Gladiators. So they had this like foam tower that they had to climb.
I remember that, yeah.
And most American Gladiators were former bodybuilders, right? So they
Mike O'Hearn.
Yeah, right.
Who actually looks better in his 50s than he did back then.
Yeah, adrenochrome for sure. So,
well, he's all natural, dude.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
yeah. And so, and it was funny because these guys would light up these guys pretty well, right? But then in that last year or so, they signed at the time Bro Greer, and Bro Greer was the American record holder in the javelin, and Bro was like, I don't know, 6'3" or 6'4", like 220 pounds, and super athletic guy, like a 90-meter javelin thrower, pretty much from a 3 stand, right? And I remember being like, I'm going to check out American. I hadn't seen it forever. I want to check out American Gladiators because Bro's on it. Let's see what happens. And it was these guys like climbing up these blocks to get to the top of the tower. And you see Bro is like a human rocket. And he's not even a football background. He's a javelin thrower, blasting guys. He would cross a period of space in like a fraction of the time, blast a dude off, go back the other way, blast a dude off. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this is a javelin thrower, right? Blasting dudes. What would a retired equivalent level running back do to these guys if they're like, hey, are you kind of retiring this year? Yeah, we'll give you $5 million to come blast dudes on American Gladiators.
Yeah, just run downhill.
It would have been horrific,
dude.
Car crashes.
Yeah, I mean it's funny to watch it now and see it and realize some of those hits and some of the people I got to play with. I remember the first time I got to go play. We were going to play Pittsburgh, and I saw Levon Kirkland, who had 6'2", 300 pounds, was the biggest middle linebacker I've ever seen. So all of a sudden, I come out and I got to hit him, and that motherfucker at the last minute saw me and fucking olayed me, and I fell right down. And I was thinking, he's 300 pounds, he's gonna put the fucking stick on me. And he just started laughing. And he was like, yeah, don't bring that shit to me, dude. And then the next time I kind of came out a little soft thinking he was going to jack me, and he fucking stabbed me right in the face. And I was like, well played, old man. And then he ended up coming and to Philly and signed, and we were great friends. And he still laughs at it. He's like, oh, dude, I saw you get down the stance. I saw your arm bent and the fucking muscles. And it's like, oh, this young dude's going to come fucking try to get me. I'm going to show him up. And then he's like, the second time I saw you kind of pussyfooting a little bit. And he's like, I fucked you up. Yeah. I was like, it was good, man. I got a ton of respect for you. I still got his jersey, so I have a montage of some of the guys I played with that I loved, and he was one. And but I mean, seeing those guys come downhill and having some dudes hit you where you're like, God damn it, that's gonna fuck. My kids are gonna feel that one in 10 years. Yeah. And I just don't think people have the ability to see it. But I mean, that was what was interesting on with the CrossFit stuff. Well, I can't fucking shit on those guys because one, they showed up. Yeah, which is more than I can say for most people. But I also was amazed by the community and the fact that these guys wanted to learn and they were willing to fucking have us fucking put them through this crucible.
They just needed their eyes open.
Exactly.
Which is great because a ton of them are still follow Power Athlete and are indoctrinated because it was their first, it was their 8 Mile moment. They showed up and they were like, I got fucking obliterated this thing and realized I needed more of this.
Well, and that was it. That was my first exposure to coaching. And I'll say it. So a collegiate athlete, D3, I had lacrosse players that were my coaches, but not coaching. And the essence, and then got to work with Raph closely for a number of months, the pipe pledge and the depth to it. Presence, intelligence quotient, professionalism, and emotional quotient. Yep. And then the level of that applies as an athlete and then a coach. So there's depth to that. And that was my first exposure to there's a levels to this game of coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's huge, and I think just opening their eyes to that. I think our field is inundated with people who just love to work out. That's literally okay. I love to work out. I love to train.
Be a trainer.
I should be a trainer. I should be a strength and conditioning coach. But there's a big difference between being an athlete who loves to grind versus your ability to communicate, your ability to be technical, your ability to, and I will say the ability to balance that. Like, that's great that you can grind. Can I communicate with my athletes to grind? But then there's times, how many hard chargers that you work with, it's like, hey, I got to pull the reins back. That's right. The majority of high level guys. It ain't about, hey, let's go, we're running gassers every day. It's, hey, I need to back you off. Instead of 10 reps, let's do 5 really good ones and do better technique. And that's the big difference of your ability to spot that. And then do you have the skill to be able to pull that off?
Raph, can you get into a little bit of this? This is something I probably push to people, but I do a really shitty job of explaining it. But the idea of like the limiting factor for speed is always going to be the replication of speed. And sometimes we get into this idea of more is better. But unfortunately, if you run poorly or it's not silky smooth or, whatever it looks like. I just got a question about this the other day. Like, this guy was like, how do I run fast? He sent us some videos and it was all over the place. It was just really ugly. And my thing is like, you need to rest more. Like, I need you to be able to do it one time well. Like, if you can't show me one perfect rep, how are we going to build upon that?
Absolutely.
And then the problem too is like, they're adding intensity, and I'm like, that was where, Charlie Francis and the tempo runs, and I know we used to do a ton of that stuff, but like, that persistent pursuit of perfection, good technique, big arm swing, toe up, knee up, and all the stuff that we did. And like, once those were established, we could start adding more intensity in the replication. And then you get to a point where it's like, boil, right before breakdown, let's back it down. And it becomes this kind of, like we were saying, on social media, where it's like everybody just wants to see everybody struggling and going hard. When I see it, a little bit of my soul breaks, because I know that there's this, like, the enemy of perfection is going to be like, I just was fucking going hard. And we used to see it all the time in the middle of in the workouts, where all of a sudden people are doing a fucking abortion type movements where you're like, dude, stop, to the point where I'm going to tackle these people and be like, dude, stop doing this. I'm just going hard. And I'm like, yeah, but that is not an excuse for fucking replicating shit.
But that was the difference between us doing a quote-unquote traditional strength and conditioning program on the CrossFit platform, because the CrossFit platform is built off of go. Start the clock, and then let me know when I'm done, versus what we were teaching was, hey, let me see one amazing acceleration. Okay, there's still time. Let's go ahead and line up and do it again, versus crappy. I need to do 5. And that was the big difference. And exactly what you said was, it's counterintuitive. When you watch somebody just absolutely grind, that is literally the opposite of what you want to do when you're talking about the fine motor coordination of running really, really fast. And so the two things that we look at is your setup. We always talk about, okay, what is going to put you in the most successful position to squat this or lunge this or bench this? And it's literally relies on your setup. Well, nobody ever looks at that as I'm running. It's the same skill. Is my toe off and the pathway of that foot going to set up my very, very powerful pushing the ground down and back? And if it's not, then it doesn't matter how many reps of that you do. The bottom line is you're just setting yourself up for failure. So it's either going to teeter to positive or negative. And I mean, people will forget that high-level sprinters will take 5-10 minutes between a set, and that's unfathomable for the average strength and conditioning coach. I couldn't imagine if I was new to the game. I was like, okay, Derek, we're going to run a 30-meter fly, and then you get done, you're like, okay, what's next? All right, well, just in about 10 minutes, I'll call you back up.
I just need you to keep walking and moving. But and then the other one came down, and we saw this too, when the off-season would start. Like, obviously there was a GPP phase, and we do a bunch of conditioning and whatnot. And I didn't realize until later on that, like, we were building all of that low level capacity, so that the ability to recover in between these max effort deal, where it was like, you ran fast, it might take you 5 to 7 minutes to recover. Now all of a sudden we can cut it to 3 because, I built a larger aerobic base on which to build. And so whenever people are like, hey, how come you put so much aerobic base? I'm like, because I'm looking for you to reduce the amount of time you have to rest before you give me perfection in the replication.
Right.
And like, that's like, I had a guy the other day who was like, I don't understand why you do these easy effort runs. And I'm like, well, they're like, 50, 60, like, they shouldn't be stressful in this. It's just low level conditioning stuff, and it's working technique and getting you to move and this. And I'm like, it's all working towards this eventual piece. And it's like, well, wouldn't it be easier if we just ran hard all the time? And I'm like, no, doesn't work like that. Like, and then you have to balance like a strength conditioning program with a run program and a distance, and you're trying to figure out like economy of time, which I learned from Raph, this economy of movement. Like, how do I put in just enough to get them better, but not so much that they can't recover the next day, or they're there for 4 hours.
Right.
Which there's not that many people that are like, fuck, I have a wife, I have a kid, I have all this other shit. I don't have time to cut 4 hours into my training. And I'm like, all right, so what do you want? And this is the bigger issue we run into, and why I'm stoked to have you, record and put all this stuff, is like see people what replication of speed looks like and how you start fighting for perfection, and realizing that the fastest dudes in the world aren't just fucking flailing.
Right.
Like, I mean, like my favorite, and I do love watching the sprints, but I really love the hurdles, just from the fact that and it's just like shooting, it's perfect because they've done it so much, and then you watch them hit one and it messes it up, and then they can't get back in the stride because they've done this so many times. They know exactly what it looks like, and it's because there's no way to do it without replication, perfection, opportunity, longevity. There's a million different pieces for this.
Right. It's like, so with Trevor, for example, in the 400-meter hurdles, I will never speak to his track workouts. It's not my world. I'm not an expert in it. I don't have a strong base in it. But I do a strength and conditioning, so I get information from that side that I can look at and try to help and balance with. But he made an interesting comment, and it was more just like in relationship to his actual training this year going into Worlds. And he's training with high-level college athletes, and he just finished college. And he was talking about the fact that it was a lot like a world-class fighter that had a lot of multiple sparring partners, because his work capacity had gotten so high over the course of the season that his ability to do high-quality repeated efforts took multiple training partners. And it's interesting for people because I don't think they realize the difference between someone that's third in the world, as he was this year, and NCAA All-American even, that he had multiple NCAA All-American potential that would come in, and one would do the first half of practice, and then he would have another guy that would run the second half of his practice, because his capacity is so big at that level that he needed multiple partners to be able to train with, because the first guy literally was laying under a bench. He ran him to death. Which the only way you get to is with age. I mean, like there's no way. I mean, especially for you see those track runners, especially the women. Like, it's not like for the 5 and the 10,000 meters. I mean, it's some of like the sprinters and even the 400 hurdlers. Like, they don't hit their peak until they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and some of those women are even older than that. Just because there's no way to be able to quantify the amount of volume and capacity you need to be successful. Joe Kovac's lifetime PR in his 30s, 10th year, if I read correctly yesterday when I saw the article. It's his 10th year of world-class throwing. He finally has his best performance. And he'll continue to improve, I'm sure. But it's like, when you think of that, it's like, oh man, it's taken him a long time to acquire the volume of reps to be able to squat 900 pounds for reps and to throw 23 meters. He's had to accumulate exposure, and it's taken a decade, You could make the argument that in the 80s and 90s, in a less stringent world of performance enhancement, that it would have been faster, because that's all it is an accelerator of time. It's not, doesn't make you a better thrower. It just, shortens the time frame. But in a heavily drug tested world, that's what you're seeing. If you do it correctly and these guys follow the process, get ready. It's going to be a while. You may be good for a long time, but you may not be great for a while. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize too. Your world-class years, they were probably, it's like that meme where it shows the miner that is turning around and going back the other way, and the other guy is an inch away from diamonds. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what a drug-tested athletic world is, if it's done correctly. It's like, listen, it's coming, but you may have to spend more time getting there than they used to. Well, look at bodybuilding, and not that that's anything. I mean, I'm not going to use the word athletic in terms of bodybuilding, but you notice the guys that we got a chance to go to the Olympia and the Arnold, and I think it's super fascinating. One,
like what they do to their bodies, like the manipulation thing. Like I remember years ago, Raph said, if you need to make bigger, stronger athletes, you're going to have to know something a little bit about bodybuilding. It's weird and it's all that, but they have figured out how to put on a ton of massive muscle on. So like if you want to make bigger athletes, not just fat athletes, you want to make jacked athletes, you got to know something about bodybuilding. So I've always been just not a fan, but like I always watch it. And it's pretty universal, like whether it be from Dorian Yates to Big Ramy and these guys, it takes them until they're in their late 20s, early 30s to be able to, the volume, the maturity, all the other stuff to be able to get to that point. And then there's like, they have a window and then they have to stop or they just fucking die.
Yeah, which we're now seeing.
But all the dudes that are dying are the young guys.
Yeah.
That are trying to cheat the process and maybe doing too much or like who knows what I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah,
but if you
that's
look
a
at
dark hole I don't want to go down.
Yeah, if you look at Yates and you look at all these dudes, they're all like early 30s. They've all like had this like 10 years of just in the fucking grind to be able to develop this like thick, crazy, the muscle you see. And then like the younger dudes who are all pretty big, like when we were there, like they just looks different. Like there's a maturity in that muscle. And then they get to a point where you're like, oh, here's my fucking window. And if I don't stop, I'll probably die in a year. And then they all fucking quit. Yeah. And I think, what's the guy, that Dennis Wolf, that big bad, he was a fucking monster. And you see him now, he's like 180.
Yep. Dorian Yates.
And Dorian Yates. I mean, Dorian like retired, quit cold turkey, which he said was a terrible fucking deal. Yeah. But, he's like, I did what I came to do. And the only thing in front of me was a fucking life of death because there's no way to maintain that.
Well, when you look at it from something as simple as running, it takes a long time to, number one, coordinate. Just the coordination. People talk about it's just running. No, it's not just running. There's a lot that goes into, running at a high level. It is just running. But if you're going to run at the top of human performance, there is a very, very distinct science to it. And it takes a long time, a lot of hours just to be able to coordinate at high velocities. And then the other aspect that people don't forget is that natural coordination changes from muscles to tendons, where all of a sudden the tendons are now literally becoming the mind of that movement, where it's just, they're not thinking. And so you have an athlete like that who is going through multiple training partners because you've spent enough time developing, number one, speed reserve. Mm-hmm. Like people forget, okay, I'm going to be fast, but there's guys who are fast and they're running 3/4 speed, where all of us are like, okay, I'm going to make my time. This guy's just cruising because that aspect is he's not even using any energy. His muscles aren't even doing anything. It's just all rubber band, and he's just moving through there. And it takes a long time to be able to get to that point.
Yeah, 45 seconds. I think he ran at Indoor Worlds in the 400 Open, right? So your training partners
in the hurdles.
I know. So the hurdles, he's 48 or 47.
47.
He's now 47. He broke the 48-second barrier at Worlds in the final.
Good for him.
Yeah, right. And so the U.S. is strong right now in the hurdles, which is amazing. But yeah, he ran 45 open indoors. So if you got like what we think of as really fast kids running 50 seconds in the 400 open, and this guy is 5 seconds faster, it's...
look at Sydney McLaughlin. Unbelievable. Like she's dropped 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
2 seconds, which
is unheard of.
Yeah. And it's not like it's a new event. It's not like, hey, let's try running 400 meters.
If I could have one bone to pick, is one, for some reason, America fucking hates track and field, and unless it's at the Olympics. Whereas we were in
Madrid.
We were in Madrid and left a seminar, went back to the hotel, and they had the European
Diamond Leagues.
No, it was the European track championships on. Yeah, and we didn't go out. We just sat there and watched it.
Isn't it amazing to actually see it on TV?
Like, it was fucking great. Like I would, anytime track is on. Like I like watching the throws. I love watching the hammer as it's flying, and then the people out there who are like judging, trying not to get killed. Yeah. So they're back, but yet they're kind of moving, and they don't know where it's going to come from.
Is it the ball or the handle?
Yeah,
the ball or the handle.
Oh yeah. And then like the track stuff in this, and like, but yet for some reason they won't put it on TV, and But to me, I mean, fuck, I would much rather sit down, and I know Rob's become a baseball dad. I would much rather sit down with my kids and watch track than watch baseball.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. Obviously, as being a track guy, it's been a bit of a bone to pick. But, you know, you go back to the early days of Nike's influence, and the reason why track sometimes is on TV, but field is not, is due to the repetition. It was all based on the camera angle of the shoe and the fact that it would give you this subconscious repetition of the Nike swoosh moving. So they would just, and if you still watch track now in the US, not in Europe so much, but in the US, they always have that one weird angle where they show like kind of waist down for like 4 or 5 seconds at a pop.
Yeah.
And what that is it's all based on the fact that Nike bought track and field. At some point, Nike
Well, they always
bought
have a
track and
camera
field.
on the thrower's crotch, which is like,
Right?
I don't know why that's so weird that they always are like shooting
From the
up
ground up?
at the ground up, and I'm like I like watching the footwork,
Yeah.
but if anything, I would rather watch from the top down so I could see the rotation of the head and then see the feet move. Like I like it like the angles, but yet in Europe when we were sitting there watching it, like they had amazing, and part of me probably goes back to the fact that I love watching pretty girls run fast. And like some of these girls are just absolutely like phenomenal looking and just moving.
The Netherlands.
No.
Oh yeah, dude.
And they're just savages. They are
Yeah.
Valkyrie savages that will burn your face
And
off.
we're like, we'll take them all. And
Yeah.
but just like big strong girls moving well through space, I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Fucking so. I
But
love
it's
watching
crazy that they don't do better. Like when we, forgive the pun, dove in deep with swimming.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to watch swimming above the water?
I know.
Like when they go underneath, and you're like, that is fascinating.
Where
like,
all the technique is
yes,
happening.
but
Yeah.
above, you're just watching a bunch of splashing, and you're like, okay, here's a line. Maybe that's somebody I'm supposed to cheer for.
Yeah.
You know, they got these caps on. You can't really make out whose cap is what. But I'm
Like-
like,
Yeah, what flag is next to them?
yeah,
Like
go
digitally.
underwater.
Like how magnificent is pole vault,
Yeah.
right?
Amazing.
Probably the greatest form of athleticism in terms of displayed in the sport. All right, I'm going to sprint as fast as I can with this long, flexible stick. The fucking precision to put it into a slot, and then I'm going to lean back and then trust that this piece of fiberglass is going to catapult me over, and then I have to work my body through space to not fucking hit this thing, and then not die when I land or get impaled by the stick.
So funny story.
It's fucking unbelievable.
Go back pre-social media, internet. Sergey Bubka,
Bubka.
right? Phenomenal athlete. One of my buddies, his coach was in Europe when Bubka was training one time, and so there's no official record of this, but they were watching him run laps, 100-meter sprints with his pole, and he was just like in position, pole vault technique, right? So not like great sprinting mechanics in the upper body, obviously, but just running 100 and then decelerate and put the pole down at the end of 100 meters, roughly. Right. And it was like a conditioning workout. So the coach was like, wow, I've never seen that before. Took out his stopwatch and there was no gun or anything. So he just watched him. And as soon as he started moving, pop, hit his stopwatch. And as the guy just kind of, as he kind of gets to 100, just stopped it. He was doing 11.2
Jesus.
at roughly 100 meters
With
holding
no
a
arm
pole.
swing.
With no arm swing. Running with a pole. And it's like, oh, so that's what a world record holder does, right? And no one will ever hear that or see it. It was just some random practice that'll go unspoken, because it's like the former high jump world record holder from Cuba. I can't remember his name.
Sotomayor.
Yes. There was a video that circulated for a while, and he was doing 300-yard single leg bounds on the sand. Just doom, doom, doom. 300-yard repeats, single leg. Yeah, on a beach somewhere in Cuba. Someone filmed it and it made it out.
I want to take this time. Raph, can we get into the purpose of the arm swing? Because the arm swing and coaching it up was something very valuable learned from the old seminar. And then the nuances of it and the importance, you've spoken on that before. Can we highlight the importance of the arm swing and coaching it up and the opportunity presented there?
Well, what's interesting is the context is if your strength and conditioning program is dialed in, I've found that I don't have to coach the arm swing, because the arm swing is a product of posture. Most people that we find that have bad arm swing, there's nothing that I'm going to do at that moment, at that run, at anything that's going to change that. They may make some adjustment to it, but the moment that they stop being cognizant of it, it's just going to go right back. But what I found is if I can get somebody open up their chest, if I can get them to retract, if I can get them to depress their shoulder blades chronically over time, then their arm swing will naturally start to level out. So with that being said, that is my test retest. So as I watch somebody, we make a note, wow, they have terrible arm swing. Let's see what that looks like in 6 weeks. Let's see what that looks like in another 6 weeks. For us, the purpose is multiple things. It's number one, it's going to drive leg action. It's going to control the rhythm and the tempo of what's happening with the legs. So if you want the legs to do what you're supposed to do, then you got to control it with the arms. If you want the arms to do what you want it to do, you've got to control it through the posture. So it's always this nice, easy, smooth down waterfall downstream. But a lot of people forget the amount of force that's occurring in the back end through your butt and your hamstrings has to be balanced with the opposite arm. And a lot of people, if you're not dialed in with what's happening here, the amount of power that's being produced will get athletes who look squirrely. They'll either start to sidewinder or they start to spin excessively because
this one.
Yep, you'll get really, really powerful action, and the only way to counterbalance that action is with good arm swing. So controlling the tempo with how tight or how broad we bring this versus if we bring this back quick, we'll get a faster rate or we'll get a longer stride. And you know, the more that somebody gets into running and learning how to run, we can manipulate that. But I've always found within the first 6 steps, if the 99% of athletes, if we fix that first 6 steps, they're going to be successful in most arenas. And that 1% is high level track.
Yeah, and that's part of the components that you're teaching this weekend is that acceleration phase.
Absolutely. We find that, like I said, 99% will get the most benefit within those first 7 steps, those first 5 to 7 steps. Anything outside of that, what we've always found, like there was a recent, I don't know if you guys follow Dr. Matt Rhee over, he was at Alabama. He was the sports scientist, the head strength and conditioning coach at Alabama. Now he's, I believe, with the New Orleans Saints, but he put out this tweet that just blew up the strength and conditioning world. And he said, from our research, our football players are better served playing soccer in the off season than they are running track. And he people went nuts. Obviously, all the track people went nuts. And his thing was change of direction, the metabolic demands of moving in space and changing directions and not hitting top speed ever in a football game for the majority of players gave him that thought of doing that. And so it's just a really interesting thing where teaching somebody to be able to accelerate, decelerate within that 5-yard, 10-yard box is going to benefit the majority of people.
Yeah, and I've seen that with lacrosse. Lacrosse is making better football players because rather than seeking the contact and trying to punish, you're now being more evasive and your eyes are up. So getting away from people and solving problems or even getting around blockers. Yeah. So there's a big battle on aiming to fight by educating the athletes of how to communicate to football coaches if there is value in playing. Because football coaches see this sport that's not football, oh, you're going to get hurt during that. No. This is going to make you more athletic, which then will help you become a better football player, which then helps the football coaches.
Or you take your offensive lineman and you have him box. You know,
yeah.
I learned how to pass set and more importantly pick up angles, cutting guys off in the ring in terms of like jumping rope and moving through space and how to cut a guy off. First meaningful touch, playing 2/3 inside out. I mean, all of this fucking angles and the pieces of terms of boxing, being able to measure distance and being able to do that. I mean, I learned all that in the ring.
I mean, it's truly everything. Everything works. Like that's really we talk about what makes a good quality coach is everybody in this. So alongside that, Dr. Rhee tweet, I mean, you took everybody who followed him was either for or against, and they weren't just, hey, that's a good tweet. It was, hey, that's an awesome tweet, or it was, you're worthless. I can't believe I follow you. Burn in hell.
Lost a follower.
Yeah, it was just like
the drama,
unbelievable black and white between the two. And I'm a firm believer. Everything works. You just have to figure out how to use it. So in track and field, get them in track and field. And the reason why you do track and field is because it builds your reserve. It builds your top end speed. So that when they are playing soccer, they are playing lacrosse, now all of a sudden 90% of this is still pretty good. And so do I think you should walk away from track? Absolutely not. Everybody should learn how to top end speed better. But there is something to playing lacrosse. There's something to playing soccer. There's something to boxing. Like, figure it all out. And the problem we run into in social media is if one is good, 10 is better. So now all of a sudden we'll have, Derek's going to be like, oh, boxing is good. So now he's just going to go be a professional boxer, and he's going to forget that the number one thing is he has to display throwing skill. And it's like, okay, don't forget that aspect. Like, we still have to be able to throw a baseball. We still have to be able to kick a football, whatever the case may be. So it always has to have that emulsifying factor, not just in the athlete, but the coaches and everybody surrounding him, is come back to that. How does this, and is the juice worth the squeeze, and how much juice do we put into you displaying your skill?
Yeah. Derek, did you ever bring throwing into the NFL weight room when you were there?
No, because I didn't have enough authority in the program.
And he probably just thought he was a weird Canadian.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
They were probably like, who's this Canadian?
What's he all about?
So
Yeah.
I'll tell you, this is how disconnected from football I was when I got to the NFL, right? Because no working knowledge of a lot of it outside of human performance. So those 3-wheel tackle dummies that, to move them, you have to push them up on one wheel, and then they can move really well. They weigh, I don't know, a couple hundred pounds. So I'm like day 3. I'm like wandering around in the field house at one end because we're going to do some running. And the head strength coach at the time was like, yells my name.
Who's the head strength coach?
Mislinski.
Okay.
He's like, hey, can you move the dummy off of the off of the field house floor? I can't believe I haven't thought of this in forever. So I'm looking at it, and I go to push it, and it doesn't move. And I'm like, I don't know how to move this, right? Because if you just tip it up on its tire, it goes perfectly, right? Like, so I'm like, what do I do? And it's like a couple hundred pounds. So I'm like pushing it, and it's not moving. I'm trying to figure it out, and now I'm just getting super nervous and anxious because all these linemen are waiting to run, and I'm out here, and I don't even know how to use their tools. So me being me at the time, I was about 280 pounds, quite strong. I'm like, fuck it. So I just picked it up. So I just bear hugged it and picked all the wheels off the, like, total world's strongest man, the stone, and just like for 40 yards, like just waddled it. And I set it down, and I'm like, all right, okay, that sucked, but that worked. And I turn and I look, and it's just blank faces and like disbelief, right? And they're like, what did you just do? And I'm like, listen, I don't know how to play your game very well, but I know how to move some stuff, right?
Earn the respect.
Earn the respect. Yeah, so strong Canadian move on that part. Yeah, and I didn't, and it was funny because the one thing that, like, when I worked with LeCharles one-on-one, coming off that patella injury that he just couldn't come back from, that's the thing we talked a lot about, was his limiting factor initially trying to get back is because of the severity of the infection he had in the patellar ligament after it ruptured, was he had to depend on contact to make it look like he could actually play. So he had no deceleration ability. His knee was a mess. So he couldn't come out and do tests for the team or tests for the the medical staff unless he made physical contact with a tackle dummy or a person to hide the fact that he couldn't plant and decelerate his forward momentum. And that ended up being something that he just couldn't get over in that time window. Yeah. And it made me realize, oh, okay, I get it. So a limiting factor for the other side, for very healthy athletes that didn't have a disintegrating patella, was the fact that they had maybe become too reliant on the fact that they were using some sort of object to decelerate concentric dynamic movement, and they actually weren't able to ever fully develop it or display it because they weren't doing anything outside of running into a wall or hitting a tackle dummy or doing something where they're making contact, and they were never getting full extension or training their body to be this maximized explosive creature. And it's like, oh, they need to do standing broad jumps.
Yeah, I was going to say broad jump or some form of plyometrics or bounding, which we did a ton of.
Yep.
We had a gymnastics mat, and so Raph and us fucking, I wish we had video of us doing this fucking stupid tumbling and cartwheels and all the stupid shit we used to do. Like that was the ability to move in space and, you know, shin hops and all the other shit we program, trying to get people to move without some form of external resistance. Like, can you be violent and move through space?
Yeah, because especially in football, the opposition is in the way. Their job isn't to stop you, right? So there has to come a point where you're training with the mindset of just blowing through something, always blowing, like they're in the way. They're not stopping me. And most people, they train to a stop. And everything in the weight room we're seeing now, chains, bands, full circle back to the start of our conversation. People are training to like 99% of extension on everything they do now because they're getting these maximum loads at the very end of extension where they're not sure what or why they had accommodated resistance in the first place. And it's like, well, it's to accommodate the joint angle through resistance.
You're also changing the strength curve, which, I mean, originally,
Right?
I think the idea was that they were trying to change the strength curve to mimic the gear they were using because you were strong. I mean, if you're a raw lifter, you're going to be weakest at the bottom of the bench or weakest in the squat. But in a geared lifter, you're actually going to be strongest at these endpoints because that's the elasticity in the gear. So I think that the accommodating resistance was to change the strength curve.
Yep.
And then they found out that, by this accommodating resistance, we can actually teach compensatory acceleration. As mechanical advantage increases, so does speed, you know, what we know from Fred Hatfield. So it was a really good indicator for people, and now they've just made it kind of ridiculous.
It's lost its way, right? You know, things that were incredibly beneficial. And I remember I spoke at CSCCAs this year, and I was just talking in a very general 45-minute presentation, but I should have known better, having never spoken at a national convention, that there was only football coaches in the crowd, right? So I was using examples from a holistic approach to human performance instead of a specific approach. And so we were talking about aspects of developing fiber relationships through time under tension or accelerated eccentric load and all these things. And I should have known better, but as the word weight releaser left my lips, you could see the football coaches in the crowd just turn and like have these debates, never work, and immediately I'm like, oh yeah, because you're training 100 guys. Yeah. So you would need all this equipment. It would be a pain. I get that. It's not my point. My point was, this is the benefit of this type of training in this scenario related to increasing load under eccentric and coming up dynamically. And so I was using it in context of something else, but it was amazing because what it did remind me is how narrow that funnel is getting. That I can't even have the conversation about a simple piece of equipment in the vast majority of these industry world or spaces now, because what ends up happening is it goes against what they already believe to be the most valuable way to do a thing. Now, the irony with that is I give my presentation and people forget that you can see everything up there, right? So you see these people disagreeing with everything you're saying and writing you off. And you're like, all right, cool. So I lost this guy, right? No big deal. Then a guy at the very back comes up and I can see him walking towards me. I'm like, wow, that guy's not getting smaller, right? Like he's just filling up my entire space. And he's like, man, and he goes into specific detail about all this stuff. He goes, great presentation. I was like, oh, thanks. And then I'm like looking at him. I'm like, I remember you. You squatted 880 at 7 a.m. at Sornex. Like, okay, so this guy gets it. This guy understands the holistic approach to human performance. It's not just, hey, give me like the color green to solve this problem that I need solved, right? And it's like, well, okay. So there is still those coaches out there and athletes that are like, I want to know everything. And not every bit of it will I use, not every bit of it will I discard, but just give me everything and let me sort through and actually become a student of the sport again. Right? And that's the part that was interesting to watch from a body language perspective, is to watch the crowd react to information as if it was this emotional attack on their existence. And I'm just like, you guys will have a very narrow success rate, because you're unwilling to use the chokehold that will win the fight. Because there will be a day where maybe oh, I don't know, head coach leaves and they lose their football gig, right? And they have to either go into the private sector or they'll have to become an Olympic sports coach. And all of a sudden, all the stuff that they didn't want to acknowledge has a place again. And they'll be an average at best coach.
Like I remember one time recently we were doing a clinic on acceleration, and it was a lot of football guys there, and I immediately lost everybody when I told them that at most, if you really want to teach good acceleration, no more than 10% on your sled.
Right.
I said there should be flight time. There, it should look smooth and pretty, and it should look effortless.
Do you know why? Because Joe DeFranco had his whole push heavy ass, like load your sled with like 1,000 pounds and try to get guys to push it for like 1 second, and like,
Oh, I remember that.
yeah, we were at that talk, and I was like, this is, and he even said, I don't know anything about physiology. I don't know anything about sports science. I just know when I've had those guys push heavy sleds, they seem to sprint faster. And everybody was like, harumph, 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 harumph. And I'm like, I was like, you just fucking lost me. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, the problem you run into is a lot of guys, because they have that audience and they have that clientele list. Hey, this worked with Dion. Well, guess what? That's Dion. I could have done nothing. I could have done everything. I could have taken everything I know that's right and then purposely did the opposite. Dion's still going to smoke everybody.
Well, like, didn't you try to, like, Dion was really inflexible. So they remember Raphael's story that they like were like, hey, if we got Dion flexible, 1 inch over the stride length over the course of 40 yards, 2/10, where Dion's going to run a 3.940, right?
Right.
And then what you do, you stretched him and he ran slower. And then they were like, don't stretch Dion. Just let him get fucking tight.
Yeah. I mean, it literally went from, okay, a performance variable versus a sustainability variable.
Absolutely,
Hey, there's some issues that are going to come up down the road if we don't start to deal with this. But the bottom line is, I took so much heat, and it was literally, you could feel the oxygen leave the room when they were like, what? What do you mean? Now what am I going to do with all my 45s? I'm like, well, you know what? Guess what? We start with an empty sled, and I want to see some horizontal flight time. But it doesn't look cool on social media. There's nothing really awesome about it until you can take a video and take talented guys who can go, look at this video superimposed on what they're doing on the track. And now they're like, wow, that looks cool. That looks sexy.
It's almost like there's pieces that are chiseled on like the Mount Rushmore of strength conditioning,
Yeah.
where it's like if you tear down their gods or try to blow up the faces, it's just like people fight specifically for it. And Louis, God rest his soul, was an amazing individual. Louis Simmons. Always been. Had always been very, very opening and open and just warm and just a wonderful person to me. That's not the response I've heard from most people, but I had a good relationship with him. There were a lot of things that Louis, talked about in terms of his lifters that he kind of extrapolated here and used, and there's some amazing stuff. And there's a lot of shit that I don't know if it'll ever float, but the problem is because Louis has become, this iconic figure. Anything that goes against, and these guys subscribe to these camps and here and DeFranco and West Side for Skinny Bastards and this, and there becomes these institutions, and you're like, dude, if not everything works for everybody.
Yeah.
And not everything works at the exact time for everybody, and that if you just follow the path and do the same and subscribe to the dogma, you're going to just get average results. That you have to think outside the box, and things that there's shit that I bought into 10 years ago I don't buy in today, and there's changes. Like some guy posted some old CrossFit football programming on Reddit, and I got somebody tagged me or sent it to me, and I went in there and was like, I even said on there, I was like, hey man, that's really old and I'm kind of embarrassed. If you want to do it, or you can come follow this shit, which is way better.
But it's good to own that stuff. I coached a national champion powerlifter from Canada who at 225 pounds squatted 880. I had him doing sets of 8 with 550 in the Zercher squat, right? Because he could do it. I hate the Zercher squat.
Zercher squatting
I don't know
and
why.
Hook gripping deadlifts,
dude,
are like my fucking kryptonite.
But you go back 20 years when I wrote this program, that's the level of understanding I had, and we were successful with it. But man, I almost feel like I should send him a gift basket and a sword, right? Because I would.
But did he want to do it?
he would have ran through a wall of brick to be a national champion.
Because what I found out sometimes in my softer years that I am now.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say now you're softer years.
Because
this is the kind and gentle Raph.
Yeah, back in the day, it was like crack a whip and it's my way or the highway. But now it's like, okay, you know what? Derek likes to curl. I'm like, really? We got a lot on this workout card. Really don't have time to curl. You know what?
Yeah.
Let's go curl.
Yep.
And you learn to ebb and flow. So that's why I ask, like, maybe he'd like to do that. And if he does, that's the bone you throw.
Right.
Like,
I wish it
Dude,
was.
I remember doing heavy Zercher squats, and all it felt like was my biceps were going to fucking rip out of my AC. Like I was going to get a bicep fucking tear.
Well, and
I'm
Zerchers are making a reemergence on the gram. And it's
well,
like,
now they have like a bar that's like they have a specific Zercher bar that they've made. I think it's a fat bar smoother than this. I mean, we were digging that like fucking Olympic bar in the pit of your arms, and I'm sitting there flexing and thinking, I can feel my biceps fucking ripping. This is a bad fucking movement for me. And then there's other people that are like, no problem. I'm like, no, I'm going to tear my biceps.
I think he's from Australia. He has an interesting Instagram. I can't remember his name. It's always him from the back. My brother follows him. And the guy is a monster. But he power cleans 405, flips it into a Zercher once he's got it up, and then just walks with it. Right? So that's why people are doing stuff like this again. The part of that equation that no one probably goes down to figure out is, who are we dealing with? Right? So I was like, this is impressive. I need to find out who this is. The guy's 6'11", 400 pounds. It's all relative. He's a giant doing giant things. Yeah. Right? So you take that guy and put him on the gram. Right? All of a sudden everyone's like, I got to start Zercher squatting 4 plates. Really? How about you don't Zercher squat at all? Because the last time I checked, the elbow joint isn't for squatting, right?
No.
Before we get down that rabbit hole, encourage you guys, like, when you're giving those talks and you see the negative, there are still people that are listening that are ready to hear it.
Right.
When the student is ready, the master appears, going back to December 2009, CrossFit Football 5th ever seminar. I
think I used that line. When the student's ready, the master appears. Which
Probably.
I pretty much stole from.
I think you
Kung
wrote
Fu
it.
No, I stole it from Kung Fu Theater.
But the way y'all think, that's why we're bringing you in here to teach, because the students are ready to learn from you.
Right.
And the reason that we've been working and leading to both do a lecture, formal presentation, and pair it with a practical, and try to capture all these different learning styles that exist that we're aware of, and then put it into a package where people can, most importantly, apply the information.
Right.
So familiar with the conferences and the seminar game, it's what you can then apply and give to your athletes that then you truly start to learn and then go and seek more information about it.
Right.
So as we're winding down our conversation here, which I hate to do, it's going to lead to an amazing weekend that our listeners can only learn more about through academy.powerathletehq.com.
Very true. Well, dude, I think it's getting pretty hot in here. It's almost 1 o'clock, so we got to go up and deal with some block ones. But thanks for sitting here on Power Athlete Radio. I'm sure we could sit here for hours, but we're going to cut it short, and we'll see you on the flip. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Power Athlete Radio.
Bye.